Assalamu alaikum. I'm Saiful Islam, your host for halalradio 1, broadcasting live from Sheffield to the UK and the rest of the world. This is the 7 o'clock slot, coming to you tonight and every night throughout the month of Ramadan. Please join us and listen to the stories of men around the Messenger. Tonight we carry on with Ja'far ibn Abi Taalib. Ya Allah, we depend on you. We have no power of our own. When things are going well for us, we know they have come from you, and we have no power of our own. In our trials, we rely on you. In our temptation, we trust in you. Our success is in your hands, and so is our lives. We have no power of our own. Ya Jabir, Ya Kareem, we cannot do without you. Save us from all evil, and guide us going out and coming in, now and forevermore. Ameen. Ja'far ibn Abi Taalib. You resemble your prophet in your looks and conduct. Notice his majestic youth and blooming vigour, patience, compassion, piety, modesty, and devoutness. Notice his fearless generosity, purity, chastity, honesty, and trustworthiness. Notice his magnificent nature, virtue, and greatness. Do not let the fact that all these excelling traits were found in one man astonish you, for you are looking at a man who resembled the Prophet in his looks and conduct. The Prophet gave him the epithet, Father of the Poor, and the adamant, the two-winged. You're about to meet the twittering heavenly sparrow, Ja'far ibn Abi Taalib, one of the great Muslims who contributed much to shaping the conscience of life. He embraced Islam and was raised to a high station among the early believers. On the same day, his wife Asma bint Usmas submitted herself to Islam. They had their share of abuse and oppression, which they withstood with courage and joy. When the Prophet, peace be upon him, advised his companions to emigrate to Abyssinia, Ja'far and his wife were among those who acted upon his advice. There they settled for a number of years, during which they had 3 children, Muhammad, Abdullah, and Auf. In Abyssinia, Ja'far ibn Abi Taalib was the eloquent companion who won through in the way of Allah and his Prophet, for among Allah's graces bestowed on him were his noble heart, alert mind, sagacious spirit, and fluent speech. The Battle of Muta, in which he was martyred, was his most magnificent, glorious, and immortal feat. Yet the day of Al-Mujara, which he executed before An-Najasil in Abyssinia, was not less in magnificence, glory, and grace. In fact, it was a singular battle of words and an impressive scene. Now the Muslim emigration to Abyssinia did not set the fears of the Quraysh to rest, nor lessen their grudges and spite against the Muslims. On the contrary, the Quraysh were afraid lest the Muslims should gain momentum there and increase in number and power. If that did not happen, the Quraysh haughtiness and arrogance could not accept the fact that those fugitives had fled their tyranny and ruthlessness and had settled in another country which the Prophet, peace be upon him, saw as a promising land for Islam. Therefore, the Quraysh leaders decided to send delegates to An-Najashi with expensive gifts and the hope that he would expel these fugitives from his country. The 2 chosen delegates were Abdullah ibn Abi Rabi'a and Amir ibn Alas, before they had embraced Islam. An-Najashi, or Negus, the emperor of Abyssinia, was an enlightened believer. Deep inside, he embraced a rational and pure Christianity, void of deviation or fanaticism and narrow-mindedness. He was renowned and highly admired for his justice. Hence, the Prophet, peace be upon him, chose his country for his companions' immigration. Now the Quraysh were afraid lest they should not be able to convince him of their viewpoint. Therefore, their 2 delegates carried many expensive gifts to the bishops and archbishops of the church and were advised not to meet Negus until they had given those presents to the bishops and convinced them of their viewpoint so that they would support them before Negus. As soon as the 2 delegates arrived in Abyssinia, they met the spiritual leaders and lavished the gifts on them. Then they sent Negus his presents. Afterwards, they began to incite the priests and bishops against the Muslims immigrants and asked them to support them in their plea to Negus to expel them. A day was set for the Muslims to meet Negus and confront before his eyes their spiteful and mischievous enemies. On the appointed day, Negus sat on the throne in awesome dignity. surrounded by the bishops of his retinue. Right in front of him, in the vast hall, sat the Muslim immigrants, enveloped by Allah's calmness, tranquility, mercy which he had sent down upon them. The two Quraysh delegates stood to reiterate the accusations which they had presented before Negus in a private meeting right before this huge audience. They said, "Your Majesty, you well know that a group of fools have turned renegade and have taken asylum in your country. They did not embrace your religion, but rather invented their own religion that neither of us know. We are people of high rank who are related to their fathers, uncles and tribes, so that you would surrender those wretched renegades to us." Negus addressed the Muslims, saying, "What is that religion that you made that made you abandon your people's religion and refuse to embrace our religion?" Ja'far stood to perform the task for which he had been chosen. By mutual consultation immediately before this meeting, Ja'far stood up slowly and gracefully, looked with appreciation at the hospitable king and said, "Oh, Your Majesty, we used to be a people of ignorance. We worshipped idols, ate dead animals, committed great sin, severed family relations, and acted according to the law of the jungle. We used to believe that survival was only for the fittest until Allah sent from among us a prophet, peace be upon him, who was known for his noble descent, honesty, trustworthiness, and chastity. He invited us to worship Allah alone and abstain from worshipping stones and idols. He ordered us to speak nothing but the truth and to render back our trust to those whom they are due. Moreover, he orders us to keep our ties of kinship intact, be good to our neighbours, and abstain from what is forbidden. He also ordered us not to commit evil, nor to say false statements, nor to eat up property of orphans, nor to accuse chaste women or doing wrong without proof or witness. Hence we believed in him and in Allah's message to him. We worshipped Allah alone. We rejected that which we used to associate with him as his partners. We allowed as lawful what is halal and prohibited unlawful what is haram. Consequently, we were harassed and abused by our people, who tried to turn us away from what Allah had sent down to the Prophet, peace be upon him, so that we may return to idol worshipping and evil and unlawful deeds we used to do. We were oppressed, abused and straitened in a way that prevented us from the proper worship of Allah. They even tried to force us to turn apostate. Therefore we fled to your country and asked for asylum to escape oppression and tyranny." When Ja'far finished his glorious words, which were as clear as daylight, Najis was gripped with compassion and grace. He addressed Ja'far, saying, "Do you have a scroll on which you have written the words of your prophet?" Ja'far replied, "Yes." And Najis ordered, "Read it aloud." Ja'far recited a number of verses from Surah Maryam in such a slow, sweet, subdued, captivating voice that it made Al-Negus and all his bishops cry. When he wiped his tears, he swiftly laid to the Quraysh delegates, "These words of what had descended on Jesus come from the very same source as that of Isa. You are free men in a free land. By Allah, I will never surrender you to them." The meeting was over. Allah had helped the Muslims and made their feet firm, whereas the Quraysh delegates were bitterly defeated. Yet Amir ibn al-As was a resourceful, crafty man who could neither accept defeat nor despair easily. Therefore, no sooner had he returned to the residence than he sat turning the matter over in his mind. Then he addressed his comrade, saying, "By Allah, I will go to Al-Najis tomorrow, and I will pluck the Muslims out from this land once and for all." His comrade replied, "You must not do that, for despite their disobedience, they are still related to us." Amir said, "By Allah, I will tell Al-Najis that they claim that Isa ibn Maryam is a slave like the rest of Allah's slaves." Thus the web was spun by the shrewd delegates so as to lead the Muslims unawares right into the trap. The Muslims were put in a fight corner. But if they said that Isa was Allah's slave, they would incite the king and bishops against him, and if they denied that the fact that he was human, then they would turn from their religion. On the following day, Amir hastened to meet the king and said, "Your Majesty, those Muslims uttered an awful saying against Isa." At once the bishops were agitated by this short but fatal sentence. They asked the Muslims once again to meet the king. so as to clarify their religious standpoint concerning Isa. When the Muslims found out about the new plot, they discussed the possibilities, then agreed to say nothing but the truth, as said by the Prophet, peace be upon him. Regardless of the consequences, once again the audience was held, and Negus started it by asking Jafar, "What does your religion say about Isa?" Jafar stood once again like a gleaming lighthouse and said, "We say what has descended on our Prophet, peace be upon him. He is Allah's slave's messenger. His words which he bestowed and a spirit created by him." Negus cried out in assent and said that the same words had been said by Isa to describe himself, but the lions of bishops roared in disapproval. Nevertheless, the enlightened believing Negus declared, "You are free to go now. My land is your sanctuary. Anyone who dares to abuse or mistreat you in any way will be severely punished." He addressed his retinue and pointed towards the Quraysh delegation, declaring, "Give them back their presents, for I do not want them. By Allah, Allah did not take a bribe from me when I restored my kingdom, therefore I will not be bribed against him." After the Quraysh delegates had been utterly disgraced, they headed back to Mecca. The Muslims, headed by Jafar, went on with their secure life in Abyssinia. They settled in the most hospitable land of the most hospitable people until Allah gave them permission to return to their Prophet, peace be upon him, who was celebrating with the Muslims the conquest of Kabir. When Jafar and the rest of the emigrants to Abyssinia arrived, the Prophet, peace be upon him's heart was filled with joy and happiness and optimism. The Prophet, peace be upon him, hugged him and said, "I do not know which makes me feel happier, Kabir's conquest or Jafar's arrival." The Prophet, peace be upon him, and his companions travelled to Mecca to perform the Umrah, to make up for the missed Umrah. Then they returned to Al-Madinah. Jafar was overjoyed with the news he heard concerning the heroism and valour of the believing brothers who had fought side by side with the Prophet, peace be upon him, in the Battle of Badr, Uhud and others. His eyes filled with tears over the companions who had been true to their covenant with Allah and had fulfilled their obligation as obedient martyrs. Jafar craved paradise more than anything in the world. He waited impatiently the glorious moment in which he would win martyrdom. The Battle of Mu'tah, as we have already mentioned, was imminent. Jafar realized that this battle was his lifetime chance to either achieve a glorious victory for Allah's religion or win martyrdom in the way of Allah. Therefore he pleaded with the Prophet, peace be upon him, to let him fight in this battle. Jafar knew beyond doubt that this battle was neither a picnic nor a limited war, but rather an unprecedented crucial war, for it was against the armies of a vast, powerful empire that excelled the Arabs and Muslims in numbers, equipment, expertise and finance. He yearned to have a role in it. Thus he was the second of three commanders. The two armies met in combat on a distressful day. Jafar would have been excused if he had been gripped by terror when he saw 200,000 warriors. Instead, he was gripped by overflowing exhilaration, for he felt urged by the pride of the noble believer and the self-confidence of the hero to fight with his equals. Again, hardly had the standard touched the sand as it slipped from Zayd ibn Harith's right hand, when Jafar darted and picked it up and broke through the line of the enemy with incredible fearlessness. It was the fearlessness of a man who was not so much craving victory as martyrdom. When the Roman warriors closed in upon him in the encircling move, his horse restricted his movement. So he dismounted and thrust his sword into his enemies. Then he saw one of them approaching his horse so as to mount it. He did not want this impure disbeliever on his horse's back, so he thrust his sword into it and killed it. He immediately broke through the encircled Roman warriors like a hurricane and recited these vehement lines of poetry. "How wonderful paradise is! I can see it approaching with its sweet and cool drink. The time for the punishment of the Romans is drawing near. Those unbelievers are not related to us in blood. I must fight the Romans whenever I see one of their warriors." The Roman soldiers were stunned by this warrior, who fought like a full-armoured army. Confounded by his fearlessness, they closed in upon him in a way that left him no escape, for they were determined to slay him. Instantly they struck with their swords and cut off his right hand. Swiftly he caught the standard with his left hand before it reached the ground. When they struck off his left hand, he caught the standard with his upper arms. At that moment, the only thing that really mattered to him was not to let the standard of the Prophet, peace be upon him, touched the ground as long as he was alive. Although his pure body was struck down, his upper arm still held the standard. The sounds of its fluttering seemed to have summoned Abd Allah ibn Rawa, who darted swiftly and gripped it and galloped towards his great destiny. Thus Jafar died an honourable death. He met Allah, the Most Great, the Most High, enveloped in self-sacrifice heroism. When Allah, the All-Knower, the All-Aware, inspired his Prophet, peace be upon him, with the outcome of the battle and Jafar martyrdom, his tears flowed as he placed his spirit in Allah's hands. Then he went to his late cousin's house and called his children. He hugged and kissed them while his tears flowed. Then he went back to his meeting surrounded by the companions. Hassan ibn Thabat, the poet laureate of Islam, lamented the death of Jafar and his companions, saying, "At daybreak, a man of a blessed nature and graceful face, commanding the believers to death. His face was as bright as the moon. He was proud, a man who descended from Al-Sham. He was a valiant man who rushed to help the oppressed. He fought until he was martyred, and his reward was paradise. There, where there are lush green gardens, Jafar was loyal and obedient to Muhammad. If Islam lost one of Al-Sham, there are still honourable and pious men of them, who are the support and pride of Islam." After Hassan finished reciting his poem, Kabin ibn Malik recited, "I am grief-stricken over the group who were struck down in succession in the Battle of Mu'tah. They strived and fought fiercely and didn't turn their back. Allah sent his blessings on them, for they were pious and loyal men. Allah made the heavy rains water their bone. They stood firm before death in Mu'tah, in obedience to Allah and for fear of his punishment. They were guided by Jafar's flag. He was the best commander. He broke through the line of the enemy and was struck down. Owing to his fierce and ruthless fight, instantly the bright moon darkened and the sun eclipsed." At the end, all the poor wept bitterly over the loss of their father, for Jafar, may Allah be pleased with him, was the father of the poor. Abu Hurairah said, "The most generous man towards the poor was Jafar ibn Abi Talib. Indeed, when he was about to die, he wanted to be the most generous, self-denying and devoted martyr. Abdullah ibn Umar said, "I was with Jafar in the Battle of Mu'tah, and we looked around for him. We found that the enemy had sprayed his body with more than 90 stabs and strikes. But those killers did not scratch his invulnerable spirit. No, their swords and spears were the bridge which this glorious martyr crossed to be near Allah, the most merciful, the Most High. He was raised to a high station in heaven. His worn-out body was covered all over with the medals of war, namely the wounds." Now let us hear what the Prophet, peace be upon him, said about him. "I have seen him in paradise. His head and wings, upper arms, were covered in blood." MashaAllah. That's the end for this evening. Please keep joining us on Halal Radio, where we will continue the stories of these magnificent men and what they achieved over the next few weeks of Ramadan. If you have any issues and need to ask any question, please email us at Halal Radio. We do have a qualified imam who is willing to offer advice and answer your questions according to Quran and Hadith. Until tomorrow, Salam Alaikum.